Colombians will be trained for the 10,000 new jobs needed in the decade of progress ahead. But something has gone wrong. There are 80 apprentices at BC Hydro who have been cut off at the pass and for whom there is no completion of their training.
I did a year in Surrey, I had to go out to Haney, I spent another year out in Haney, now I had to move to Abbotsford, and now I'm out in Abbotsford, and now I got laid off. So this is kind of like 8 years of my life, right down to the crunch, so like you got 4 months to go. And all I want, is just get that, even if you don't want to work after, as long as you get it, you can always go somewhere else.
4 months to go and he's not going to get his journeyman's ticket. That's one thing this morning. Also on this morning, in a lighter vein, we meet the delightful Sir Richard Attenborough, the famous British actor who took 20 years to produce Gandhi, 3-hour movie. Here's a little snippet from the interview which is coming later.
If this movie engenders an interest in non-violent protest, in non-violent action in favor of certain aspects of human conduct, and obviously the pertinent one now is this huge groundswell of opposition to nuclear armament and the possible holocaust of nuclear war, then yes, I am an evangelist. I would like Gandhi to be familiar to people. I would like people to question what he had to say and what he believed in. And if they do that, then the film is justified.
And much to my surprise, I find that the same Sir Dickie, Sir Richard, is a member of the Social Democratic Party in the United Kingdom. Now, we have the man in the studio this morning who's going to do Van der Zam's homework for him on the faults and excesses and administrative costs of the school board. His name is Mark Sager. He is former chairman of the West Vancouver School Board and should know whereof to look. But first off the top this morning, the critical problem of the apprentices laid off quite cold-bloodedly, it would seem, by BC Hydro without an opportunity for the few weeks or months extra to finish their apprenticeship training and get their journeyman tickets. After the break. Unemployment, unfortunately, in BC at the moment is the name of the game. But I'm with a group of men whose unemployment is different. Everyone expects to be laid off now and again, especially in times of recession. But these are apprentices. These are BC Hydro apprentices, one of the real creamy apprenticeships to get in this province. And I'm going to find out if they thought, that, like I always thought, that once you got an apprenticeship, you were indentured, kind of high-class slave to your employer at lesser rates to learn the job, but that you had a job for the period of your apprenticeship. Such is not the case. Now, obviously, I'm standing outside the BC Hydro business with about 20 of 60 apprentices who weren't laid off. They at first were told that they were laid off, and then it turned out that the reason given was in error. The decision to lay off apprentices was made on the basis of a slackness of work due to a projected decline in Hydro's future requirements for journeymen and the knowledge they would be journeymen subject to recall. In other words, in my brutal way, and these guys might agree or disagree with me, what happened was Hydro looked at electrical requirements and trades requirements for the futures and said, hey, we're not going to need any more apprentices to become journeymen. And I would add, well, 5 years down the road, having cancelled out the apprenticeship training here, they'll bring in more skilled tradesmen from Western Europe or somewhere else to take the jobs. Now, first of all, I want to talk to the guy from Williams Lake. Your name?
Ron Hardwick.
Ron, how long have you been an apprentice and what kind of an apprentice?
We were apprentice 25 months, I believe, and it was a lineman apprenticeship.
Lineman apprenticeship. Were you indentured to the Hydro?
Yes, we signed an agreement with Hydro that we took in good faith, and they said to us, for the term of 3 years, you will be employed by us and be governed by our rules.
Did you have any idea that you could be laid off because they could stop you in mid-training and say, we'll never need you, goodbye and God bless you?
No, it was my understanding that I took the apprenticeship, as I say, in good faith, and I did my part, and Hydro said to me one day, you're not required with this company, so thank you very much.
Now, had you worked for the Hydro before you took your apprenticeship?
Yes, I was a line truck driver.
Line truck driver, and you were making good money then?
I was making more than an apprentice.
Now, have you got another job in the Hydro through any reason at all?
No other job with Hydro since
None
layoff.
whatsoever. Now I want to go to this chap here. Were you a lineman apprentice too?
Yes.
For how long?
25 months.
And your name?
Dave Hunt.
Dave Hunt. And where were you apprenticing here?
Out of Langley and Coquitlam.
Do you feel the company's let you down?
Very.
I mean, really?
Yes. I'm very disillusioned.
Now, you were lucky enough to get some kind of a job after you were laid off, wasn't you?
That's right. Correct.
What kind of a job?
Right now I'm working as a driver helper. I'm pumping gas and washing vehicles.
But you're still in the IBEW as
That's correct.
such.
That's correct.
But that's what your future now is, to pump gas and wash vehicles.
That's the way it looks, Jack. I've worked all this time. I've taken the training. I've climbed the poles. I've done my bit, and suddenly I can't even get back into the same trade. Even as a line truck driver, I'm doing something else.
Could you go to another province and have credit for the apprenticeship you've done here? I mean, hypothetically speaking.
We're not too sure. Some of the fellows had to leave the province, and they got a couple of months' work in, and they're still trying to get recognition for that time in.
Now, here's a face I know over here, and I want to talk to him. Your name?
Stan Goodman,
Stan. How old are you, Stan?
45,
45. And much time had you served in your apprenticeship trades training?
25 months
As a lineman.
as a lineman apprentice.
Tell me, generally speaking, are all of you 25-month apprentices?
More. Some of us are more.
Some of you are more, eh?
Yeah. We got 4.5 months to go.
You had 4.5 months to go.
That's right.
How long did you have to go?
4.5 months.
We're all in the same class. We all had 4.5 months, yeah.
to go. How about you?
I had more to go. I only had 22 months in.
You had 22 months in, and you had what?
9 months to go.
Stanley, when was it we met before?
I was driving for Blacktop Cabs, 1973. You were down in Gastown at the time. Used to pick you up, and we were discussing about getting a trade at that time. You said to me, go back to school there and do something. I did. Here I am.
So you gave up driving cab.
That's right. I went back to school, and it was really tough. As you see, I'm not exactly the youngest guy here. And
41, 42?
I was 42 when I went into it. They said I was too old, and I kept fighting them until they finally gave it to me.
So you got into the union, you got your apprenticeship.
That's right.
You've got your old job back?
No, I'm up in Chikai substation as a driver helper, which I have a wife and family in White Rock, so I run it every day.
How disappointed are you at losing the prospect of finishing your trade? I don't want to hammer it, but it's like going through for law school or a doctor or a dentist or something, and whammo, they cut you off even if you haven't filled an exam.
Well, we know right now, if it had been a doctor or a lawyer, they would definitely wouldn't have done it. There'd be so many screams that it would be ridiculous.
Quite ridiculous. Now, there's a young guy up here. Can you come down off that perch? What's your name?
Mark Haston,
Where are you from, Mark?
Lillooet originally.
So you went in straight in as an apprentice without ever working for another department in the Hydro?
Yeah, I was a line truck driver at the beginning, and then I took my apprenticeship and lost my job as a truck driver.
Now, who can explain, and now are you out of work now?
Yes.
Are you out of work?
No, I'm working in Surrey stores. Yeah.
Oh, the BC Hydro?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get a job.
Who's out of work?
Right here.
Your name?
John Burns,
And from?
Kamloops.
Kamloops. So when your apprenticeship was laid off, that was it?
Yeah, when I was laid off, I was pretty choked because I walked out of the Kamloops District line room without my apprenticeship and without a job when there was a temporary employee sitting right beside me, as he was a temporary line truck driver, and I couldn't even have his job. And yet, you know.
Give me that again. You were a BC Hydro employee. You had been a line truck driver.
Right,
You graduated into the apprenticeship program.
correct.
You done how many months?
31.
You only had 5 months to go.
Yeah, 4.5 actually, yeah.
And can't you bump that temporary line truck driver because of your seniority under the union agreement?
Not the way it was laid out, I guess, because I'm not working.
What's the union say about it? Well, anyway, I don't want to put you on union. The fact is that one of your grievances is that temporary employees have had precedence in jobs over fairly long service apprentices with other service in the company.
Exactly, and everywhere you go within this system, for myself, there should be at least a line truck job for me to bump back into, because I did have 3 years seniority, and there is drivers working with less, and I feel that I should be able to have something there.
I know what you mean. Are you married?
Yeah,
Where are you from again now?
Kamloops.
Kamloops. Gosh, Kamloops is pretty rugged these days, isn't it?
Yeah,
The
you don't-
refinery closed down.
Yeah, and all the pulp mills shut down pretty well. There's working at half shifts and Afton and.
All right, now what I want to get now from some of you gentlemen is what opportunity is there to finish your apprenticeship so that you become a journeyman? What do you say?
I say what we could do, and maybe the only hope that I see that we have is we can go to another province, drag our families and everybody else back there, maybe finish our training or whatever in another province, and in the future, Hydro, obviously like they've done in the past, they're going to turn around and go to the other provinces or down to the States, find qualified journeymen and bring them back here.
They've brought qualified people in from the States many a time before, as I recall.
That's right, and they'll do it in the future again if they don't keep an apprenticeship program here.
Your name?
Don McNabb.
Don McNabb from?
The last 4 years, I've been to Langley, Fort Nelson for 2.5 years, Smithers for 1.5 years, and just recently back down to Abbotsford here.
You've been around?
Yeah, with my wife and 3 kids.
Now, there are a number of apprentices still working in the BC Hydro, I should presume.
No, I'm not working. I would be working if I had kept my job as a line truck driver and not taking this apprenticeship.
How long had you been a line truck driver?
I've been a line truck driver for about 6 months, but the time of my apprenticeship did not count towards my seniority when layoffs came.
So you, looking back on it now, and I don't mean to be snarky, what a silly fool. If you'd hung on to your line truck job, you would have been secure in your seniority because you tried to improve yourself. You're out in the cold, cold snow.
No, I feel this is a good program, and I feel it should be continued, and I should have a chance to finish.
That's your plea, or that's your demand. Whose responsibility is it to finish your training?
It's my own.
Good for you, but
I'd like a place to finish it. And maybe it'll have to be another province, or I'd like to know where to go to finish it.
how did they break the news to you again? Who wants to tell me that happy day when they broke the news to you? They
Step
did,
into my office.
but they told you first you were laid off.
No, I was told, come into my office, I want to talk to you for a minute, and close the door.
And did you realize that this was a termination of your indenture?
No, not at the time. I had a feeling about it.
At our district, it happened a bit different. We were told, brought in with all the other regular employees, we were told that due to the lack of work, there'd be some employees laid off, and they would be apprentices. What happened then was that all the apprentices started around looking at each other saying, it wasn't going to be me, who would it be? And as we found out, a period of about 3 weeks later, it was all the apprentices everywhere.
Yeah, as I said at the beginning of the program.
I had an infected finger there for a while as I was in the hospital, and they came in and gave me mine when I was in there. That's the way, I heard it was coming in the grapevine, and I was laying there, and I come in, and it was handed to me right in there.
Married?
I was. Actually, I used to drive a bus for a couple of years, and I applied for 2 years, and finally I got a job. I had to move to Fort Nelson to get the job, and my wife didn't like it, so she left me, so I lost that over that. I finally got the job. I had to pay my own move down to Surrey. I did a year in Surrey. I had to go out to Haney. I spent another year out in Haney. Now I had to move to Abbotsford, and now I'm out in Abbotsford, and now I got laid off. I gave you the message. I've only got 4 months to go to finish the whole thing, and I had enough seniority that 8 years. I had to bump some guy out in the Surrey vehicle garage, and now I'm cleaning pits, and now I'm back out in Surrey. So am I supposed to move back to Surrey again and start all over again, eh? So,
yeah.
So this is kind of like 8 years of my life, right down to the crunch. Like you got 4 months to go. And all I want, is just get that. Even if you don't want to work after, as long as you get it, you can always go somewhere else.
Now,
I'd like to say when I was laid off, I was called in the district manager's office and received my letter stating I was laid off, and on that letter it said that I was laid off due to slackness of work. But my district manager in Kamloops said to me at the time that he saw no slackness of work in the district, and that's what the letter stated. In the district, there was a slackness of work.
Well,
So,
the official layoff letter here from Demers, Labour Relations Supervisor, and the knowledge in the future that there would be journeymen subject to recall, making it quite clear that they don't need any more apprentices for the foreseeable future.
Well, that was another letter we got after the first letter.
Yeah.
So, you know, kind of backtracking on themselves there.
The first letter was in error. They said it was a layoff due to shortage of what, and then it was a layoff due to shortage of need.
Good BC Hydro bureaucracy, I can see a little bit.
Well, they certainly didn't seem to know if they were punched or bored on this occasion. Your name, sir?
Jeff Richardson.
From?
Chilliwack.
Chilliwack. Now, what really worries me about you guys is that there is no mechanism by which you can now get your ticket, finish your course as a journeyman. Could you go, if you picked up any kind of non-union job anywhere, I'm not suggesting you do, but can you change your indentureship in the middle of an apprenticeship training, do you know?
I believe so, yeah. But that, you know, you have to go to province, or then they'd probably hire you when you come back. In Alberta or an Ontario lineman, sure.
Oh, I know, that's really, I mean, a dozen times over the years I've seen them advertise for skilled tradesmen in the United Kingdom because we didn't train our own people, and here we are, 60 of you, 20 of you here right now, all of you nearly fully qualified tradesmen, and you can't get your ticket because the hydro's chopped you off at the feet, right?
We're going to school right now on our own time and that, most of us, with no guarantee that we're going to come out of it with anything. We're writing all our final exams, and we've got 4.5 months left to go. It's just a mind-boggling for all of us. We don't know whether we're coming or going or what's going on. We can't get answers from anybody.
We've made phone calls to our administrator, and we can't get any results. All we get is the big runaround. It seems they're either in a committee or they're too busy to talk to us.
Well, I've tried to read Mr. Hope's arbitration award, and with the greatest respect in the world, the only thing I can get out of it is that the hydro is entitled to terminate your apprenticeships, and there's a dreadfully complicated bumping procedure by which some of you might get jobs sometime now in the future. Gentlemen, I'm grateful to you for coming here today. Anybody else want a last word?
Yeah. Have us finish. If we finish, then lay us off. Leastways, we'll have a ticket. Leastways, we'll have a trade. We'll be journeymen. We'll be able to find a job somewhere, Jack. But right now, we have nothing. Zero.
Let me make the picture clear. About 2,500 to 3,000 apprentices have been laid off during the recession. Now, layoff means you have an interrupted apprenticeship. And it might take you 7 years to do your 3 or your 4-year apprenticeship. But these guys are different. 80. BC Hydro, many of them within weeks of finishing and laid off. And as the last guy said on the program there, if they could just be given the time to finish their apprenticeship and get their tickets, their qualifications, then the feeling of that particular group, I think I can safely say, was that they would accept a layoff. And in view of the policies of the BC government, oh, just before I forget, I know that between 75 and 82, 116 non-Canadians were brought in to work in the hydro as skilled tradesmen of some kind. And one does not want to accuse the government of saying, letting the hydro say, okay, go, we don't need you. Up comes the big boom, wham, more people in from outside. On the telephone, I have Bob McClelland, the Minister of Labour. Good morning, Mr. McClelland.
Good morning.
Mr. McClelland, I had to refer to your recession-proof ads in which you say, very forcefully, that on the 10,000 new permanent jobs needed for British Columbia, these highly skilled, highly paid workers will be British Columbians, and that you have a special developmental funding of $100 million to make sure the training takes place. Why can't that apply to these fellows who are within weeks of finishing a lengthy and skilled apprenticeship?
Well, it does apply in many ways, Jack. We're working very hard with hydro at the present time through my ministry to include some of the hydro linemen in what we've established here in British Columbia as a first in Canada in a simulated apprenticeship program to help out some of those apprentices who have been laid off. We have a proposal before Hydro now to take on a program at their hydro training school that would start immediately we get approval from BC Hydro, and also one at Malaspina College on Vancouver Island that we would hope would also be approved quite quickly.
Well, let me ask you a question.
You know, of the laid-off apprentices in the province, and let's face it, there are a lot of people laid off in British Columbia right now because of the economic conditions, most of whom have no jobs whatsoever. But of the of the laid-off apprentices, we've now put well over 300 people into simulated apprenticeship programs around the province.
Now, you've told me something quite definite, but let me question you on it. It would seem that, are you prepared to put these 80 hydro apprentices, specially skilled guy, properly qualified, obviously eager and hard-working, are you prepared to guarantee them places in a training program which will give them their tickets?
We won't be able to use them all at once, Jack, but we would hope that if the programs get approved, that over a period of a few months, we'd be able to handle all of the laid-off hydro apprentices. But it'll take some time. We've got 2 locations, and I'm told that we can't take large numbers in those two locations, probably a dozen at a time, on a continuous intake basis, and an accelerated basis too, whereby we could give them, if they prove to be qualified at the time, we could give them extra credits because they're in a very intensive program. But we would, if we get approval from the parties involved, we would be able, I would think, to handle all of them over a period of a few months.
Well, now there's a couple of points there. We've spoken to the Apprenticeship Board of British Columbia, and they say, yes, there is a simulated training program, very expensive, no commitment from Hydro. Now, these guys have been knocking around since last November, and Hydro is obviously sitting on its thumbs, and there's been no proper communication either from the union or from Hydro to these 80 kind of outcasts. Can't you tell Hydro to make the decision to put these guys back for 4 months in some cases and let them finish their apprenticeship on the job, which they would much prefer to simulated training?
Well, when I first met with some of the Hydro guys themselves, I put my people to work on it immediately, and they have been working with Hydro. I'm told we expect a decision by Friday. It's working. This program is working all over the province in other trades, and I see no reason why it won't work in this one.
Yeah, because there's no doubt about it. You have said on the commercials, and they're very impressive, the highly skilled, highly paid workers in BC will not be brought in, they will be British Columbians. So you really have a commitment to look after these apprentices particularly, do you not?
Oh, sure. We've got a commitment to try and make sure that when the economic recovery comes, that we're ready for it and that we have skilled people. And that's the reason that British Columbia was the first province in Canada to come up with the idea of this simulated apprenticeship program.
Are you a director of BC Hydro, Bob?
No, I'm not.
You used to be at one time.
Yeah.
Well, why did Hydro behave in such a clumsy fashion that they laid off these people without, first of all, consulting with you and the Apprenticeship Board and having a plan instead of brutally terminating their indentures?
Well, I suppose Hydro was operating. You know, Hydro's got some problems of their own in a tremendously lowered demand for their product, and I think they had to take some action. And they've got a union contract in place too, which they've got to honor. Frankly, we're having trouble not only with management in making sure our training programs work, but sometimes the unions get in the way a bit as well. So we have to knock some heads from time to time. But you know, I think we're working just as quickly as we can to help overcome this problem.
But your only alternative, would you not consider telling the Hydro to let these guys finish their apprenticeship on the Hydro's debts? It's really only a tiny little spit in a bucket.
Well, if we get the apprenticeship program going, the simulated apprenticeship program by Friday, it won't solve all the problems all at once, but it'll go a long ways to making sure that these guys at least know where they're going.
Now, you've given me, who's going to make the decision Friday, the Hydro?
Well, it'll be a joint decision that's made. Hydro's got, you know, we can't run the program ourselves, unfortunately. Hydro's got to be involved in it, and as far as I'm concerned, the program has to go.
All right.
Whatever I have to do to get it going, we'll get it going.
Okay, Bob McClelland says on the Province Report, the Cabinet Committee for Employment Development is responsible for ensuring that British Columbians will have these jobs in the future.
We're not going to import people, Jack.
You know perfectly well, I mean, you won't disagree with me, that we've imported them by the scores and scores in the past, and I made the brutal prediction that 3 years down the road, if you don't train these Hydro apprentices, we'll be bringing them in from the States and Europe.
Well, the problem, Jack, is that they're not available anymore anyway, even if the province wanted to. You know, where we used to get our pools of labor in Europe particularly,
right.
Those people don't want to leave there anymore. Things are better for them over there. They get better wages. They have more stability than they used to have. We don't even have that pool available to us, even if we wanted to use it, which we don't.
Anyway, Bob, every time I watch your excellent recession-proof ads, I will remember your commitment of $100 million in additional spending, and your is it a commitment that we will have a firm decision, comprehensible, from the hydro by Friday?
Well, I certainly hope so. I'm going to be working between now and the end of the week to make sure that we get a quick decision.
Yeah, maybe you should give Bob Bonner a call.
Maybe I should.
My thanks to Bob McClelland, Minister of Labour. Thanks, Bob, and I'll keep admiring your flawless performance on the ads, but you got to measure up to your promises.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Bob. Next. Oh, just by the way, little bulletin. Benno Friesen's just been elected chairman of the Caucus. Benno Friesen. He's on the line. Two things. I'll take Mr. Friesen immediately after the break, and I'm going to take partly a segment of calls on the apprenticeship problem. Benno Friesen, Conservative MP for Surrey-White Rock and North Delta, has just been elected chairman of the Conservative Caucus in the House of Commons. Good morning, Mr. Friesen.
Hi, Jack.
Mr. Friesen, does that mean that you will now be the opposition leader in the House until a new leader is decided?
In no way. In no way. Eric Nielsen will be our House leader. I am simply, for language I think all of us understand, the moderator of our caucus meetings, and I will be our caucus representative, one of our caucus representatives on our national executive. But I am not the spokesman on political affairs. I want to make sure that that everybody understands that my job is to make sure that our caucus meetings flow smoothly.
Good. Well, I know that you voted for no review for Joe, but in other words, you have taken Huntington's place. Is that correct?
Yeah, I take no pleasure in that, really. I have unrestrained admiration for him.
And you've taken his place. Now, Mr. Nielsen has apparently been selected by the caucus as the House leader.
That's right.
Now, what about the party leader? Is Mr. Clark still the party?
Yeah, that's the legal entity that has to be settled by the national executive. The party leader is an official position on which the party structure elects. House leaders is the manager of House affairs here in Ottawa.
I've got it. Benno Friesen, chairman of the National Caucus. Nielsen is the House leader in the House. Joe Clark remains the official head of the party if and until a new leader is or is not found.
And until the national executive deals with that particular aspect of it.
Benno, thanks for giving me a crisp little report on it. We like to keep up to date with the glories and the wonders of the Conservative Party.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Benno. Now going back to the apprenticeship program. I just couldn't resist throwing these recession-proof ad quotes at Bob McClelland this morning. Go ahead, please.
Hello there, Jack.
Yes.
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment saying that legislation definitely needs to be enacted in British Columbia to ensure that apprentices in any trade, no matter what trade they're in, are guaranteed to be able to finish their trade in the apprenticeship, no matter what the economic times brings. Because this is it's like an educational program. They've had this in Europe for many, many years, and you're going overseas to pick journeyman, which social credit has been famous for many, many years in this province, is not the answer to helping our people and our youngsters that are coming out of our schools. I think social credit has been absolutely irresponsible in the whole apprenticeship approach in this province ever since the 50s when they got started, and it's time they were kicked out of office and smartened up one way or the other.
I'm dealing clinically with this position. I've attempted to understand the apprenticeship program in this province for 25 years and found it damn near impossible. You can't say, however, that a guy who has one apprentice who goes out of business is going to have to complete that, but he can transfer. The point I make here is that the hydro is they're the big boys. They're the ones that bring in the people from outside the province for their mega projects. And they should be required to finish the apprenticeships. But I appreciate your sentiments. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Webster.
Morning.
I hate to reiterate on the old facts of how the layoff was carried off and the cost of it, but I'm one of the people that's involved in it. I was a cable apprentice, one of very few in the province. There
were
6 of us, and there's 30 journeymen in the province when I indentured 3 years ago. I personally had enough AV and VO to cover me through to my termination date, that is annual vacation and vacation overtime.
Right.
Now, if they had allowed me to credit that time against my apprenticeship, I would be graduated at this time. The monies that they paid me out is payment in lieu of notice, and if in fact they do have to rehire me due to what's come down in the Hope report, this has cost the public a heck of a lot of money from the public coffers, not forgetting that BC Hydro is a public corporation.
You're telling me that you had sufficient cash in annual vacation and vacation overtime that they could have said to you, it won't affect our budget if you work on to finish your apprenticeship and your exams. Is that right?
That's correct, sir, and I would like to add to this at this time that I didn't even have to work. This is vacation overtime from last year. This is my vacation from last year, and the vacation I was entitled to take as of January the 1st.
So therefore, you have not finished your apprenticeship, you have not got your tickets, but you got money. And how long would it have taken you to pass your exams and get your ticket?
I had 5 months of VO and AV banked, and that would have covered me right through till the time that I required to finish the ticket.
Well, at least...
Now, to go a little farther on this, Jack, we were notified at 8 o'clock in the morning with no pre-notice at all, and this is what we understood was happening all over to create this mass layoff situation, which is mentioned in the Hope report.
Yeah.
I have done a little studying on my own since, and I've found that material on stock, and at the interest of that material on stock of canceled projects for our department, would have covered the wages for the 6 apprentices that were involved anyways.
I believe you, but the Hope report does say the employer is bound by the provisions of the apprenticeship agreement, but it doesn't have to retain them.
That's correct. You're
Much obliged. I got to go. 44 from Cranbrook. Go ahead from Cranbrook.
Yes, good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I was one of the apprentice linemen laid off. I was in the 24-month bracket, too. I was fortunate enough to get a job in Alberta 1 week after I was laid off, along with another apprentice that was on the program I noticed earlier. Together, we were working out in Alberta for a contractor. The wage was considerably less. That didn't matter to me, as I was into getting the time credited. I was told by a union member that this time would be credited to me. Of course, that hasn't been confirmed or anything, but I'm just under the understanding that the time that I did put in out there will be credited to my apprenticeship. We have both now been laid off out there as things have slowed down in the new year, too. However, the big thing is that I had to go out to Alberta on my own and find a job and continue my apprenticeship. And as far as hydro goes, surely to God, with the large legal department that they have, should have known the ramifications that would be involved in laying off both apprentices and regular employees.
Yeah, well, obviously the union's got problems here with its layoff affecting journeymen and all the rest of it. The least that they could have done was look at the apprentices, apprentice by apprentice, decide who could work on till they got their tickets, and for those who couldn't work on, who just new into the program, they could have firmed up this so-called simulated program if it's satisfactory and done it properly and efficiently at the right time. And they didn't do it. Now, what are my commitments this morning? I've got Sir Richard Attenborough, I've got Sagar. I'm going to leave the apprenticeship thing there for the moment. They've had a pretty good say on what's what. Now, oh yes, we may have a spokesman from Hydro tomorrow, but McClelland still has to speak to Bonner, and I don't want a spokesman if he can't give me answers. I want to know what the plan is now to carry out the government's promises that the highly skilled, highly paid workers will be British Columbians trained here by the recession-proof fund of $100 million. And we don't see, as happened just this very last call, a guy having to lay off his indentureship here and go and pick up a bit of it in Alberta and hope his time will be credited. Next, relax. Delightful interview with a delightful guy, Sir Dickie Attenborough, after the break. Sir Richard, if I may be so bold, it's funny how your image has changed to me. When I came in here tonight, having seen Gandhi, I didn't know whether to give you this, or to say, tension!
Oh, yes.
Because you've turned out to be a rather contradiction in character from my impression of you, having watched you low these many years. What happened to you?
Well, I read a biography of a man called Gandhi, and that was in about 1962, 63, written by an American biographer, very good biographer called Louis Fisher. And suddenly, having been content with shouting, as you say, attention, and producing movies, I, with no previous desire at all to direct, suddenly wanted to direct film. I suddenly wanted to make this movie about this man, and that was on a very superficial first reading, and from then on I devoured everything that I could lay my hands on about him, and to the point of obsession, really, and becoming convinced ultimately that he was probably, I think, the most remarkable man of this century.
And at one time, perhaps in your earlier career, were you brainwashed like some of the people who were born in the colonial regime?
Right.
Did you ever think he was, just as Churchill said, a half-naked, seditious fakir who caused nothing but trouble for the poor old British Army and the Raj?
Yeah. No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No, I didn't. I came from a very radical background, not very radical, but a radical background. My mother and father were early members of the British Labour Party, and they were totally opposed to colonialism and subjugation and so on, so that I was ready meat, as it were, for the subject of Gandhi. And no, I thought he was a phenomenal man, and even at that time, I mean, I didn't know a great deal about him. I'm older than you are, and I...
No, you're not.
Oh, yes, I assure you I am. I'm very, very old.
1923.
Same year.
No, I'm 1918.
Oh, you're right. Oh, I thought, that's a cheating. I thought No, what I was going to say was that I came out of the Air Force in, what, 45, 46, and at that time the Labour government was just in, and part of their manifesto was the independence of India. So to that extent, all the front page stories in those days was India and Gandhi and so on. But that apart, really, up until his death, that he was murdered in 48, one was aware of him as a figure around. And I think the thing that impressed me more than anything else was not actually his philosophies or his credo in any sense, really. It was his phenomenal courage, moral and physical. I thought he was a remarkable man. But then, of course, he disappeared at the time of his death, and I really thought little of him until I read the biography again.
He left a legacy, but even the legacy didn't survive too strongly for some time in India thereafter.
Correct.
Am I not correct?
No, absolutely, absolutely.
He was not beloved by all of the Indian subcontinent.
No, he was not, because, of course, apart from anything else, he fell foul of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Gandhi, as you know, believed... Well, he made a marvelous statement, I think. He said that he had an interest in and an admiration for and wished to find an understanding for any religion in the world, because the chances were that the people who followed that religion required that religion. He said, therefore, I welcome all religions into my prayer meetings or my life or whatever. He said, there are many windows in my house, and I want the winds of all the religions to come on, provided I don't get blown off my feet by any single one. And he believed passionately in a secular state. And the thought that India was to be divided into a Muslim state and a Hindu state was to him total failure. I mean, it meant that he had not won his day, as it were. So he inevitably made, it would be cruel to say that Gandhi made enemies, but he did, in fact.
Apart from your obvious, sincere obsession with Gandhi, whom you regard as one of the great men who ever lived, and many other people do, it took you 20 years.
Yeah.
You had to change your life, change your career in many ways. You had to go a different way, and it still took you from, what, 63 to 83 to complete the project.
Yes.
Now, crass commercial question. Was it not a ghastly gamble? For instance, if you mention to any young people today that you're going to do a story on Hitler, I suggest to you with all possible deference, a number of youngsters might not know his first name.
Sure.
They might know Hitler.
Sure.
With Gandhi,
sure,
you've got to recreate
sure,
Gandhi as in your movie, and it must be a commercial success.
Yes.
Or you're how much in the hole?
Yes. Well, one must be scrupulously honest about this. I obviously invested quite a lot of money over the years. But once the film was a goer, was a runner, then the monies that I'd actually invested were repaid to me. My gamble as of this moment is that I took no salary for the film, so that the 3 years' work that I've done has been unpaid for. That is my gamble now. But you're absolutely right. I went to every major American distributor, every major British distributor, and they all said, who the hell wants to see a film about a little brown man dressed in a sheet carrying a beanpole? We know nothing about him. He has no interest for the public, and you're wasting your time. Nobody will put the money up, and even if you ever make the film, nobody will ever go and see it.
What is a dhoti, they might say?
And they might say, what is a dhoti? Yes, a handsome little sheet, which covered all that was necessary.
Right.
But I felt very much that there was so much inherent drama, and the sort of thing that we mean by drama. I mean, there was humour, there was excitement, there was emotion, etc., in this subject. And I was convinced that there was an audience. I think we're fools in the cinema industry in many areas, but primarily I think because we underestimate the audience. We really do think that an audience only wants to see total escapism, and I don't believe that's true. Well, I mean, it's been proven with this picture. We've been running now, what is it, to the beginning of February. We've been running 2 months, and literally millions of people have already been to see the film, and it's a very extraordinary thing.
I hate to ask a kind of esoteric, little bit of a philosophical question. Is it your secret desire, or your public desire, that you can recreate the non-violent spirit of a humble Gandhi on the face of this foul, miserable earth today?
Well, sir, I don't know that I can recreate it.
I'm asking if you're an evangelist, really.
Well, I suppose every actor's a bit of an evangelist, because most evangelists deal with the heart rather than the head, and actors do. I can only illustrate it, I think. I was in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, and I was very touched. I think it's probably the most moving occasion of my life, and meant more to me than anything else. The Martin Luther King Center gave me the Peace Award for 1983. And I was talking to a remarkable man, Andrew Young, who's the mayor of Atlanta, and we were up on a big hotel, you know, looking down over Atlanta. And Andrew Young said, you know, this city is Martin's city, because if Martin had not lived and had not followed Gandhi, absolutely, this city may have been razed to the ground. The anger and the resentment of the blacks in the southern part of America was such in the 50s and 60s that it may have been the most terrible Holocaust. Therefore, Gandhi, basically, because Martin Luther King followed Gandhi, is responsible for the existence of Atlanta. It was the major non-violent protests, as advocated by Gandhi, which persuaded first JFK and then Lyndon Johnson to bring forward into priority the civil rights bills. So in answer to your question, if this movie engenders an interest in non-violent protest, in non-violent action in favor of certain aspects of human conduct, and obviously the pertinent one now is this huge groundswell of opposition to nuclear armament and the possible holocaust of nuclear war, then yes, I am an evangelist. I would like Gandhi to be familiar to people. I would like people to question what he had to say and what he believed in. And if they do that, then the film is justified.
More with Sir Richard Attenborough after the break. I don't obviously have to recap any of your career, but I remember you well as a stoker in which we serve.
Correct.
Can you recall with me, I even felt bitterness in those days, and I don't know if you can give me who ordered it. Somebody hated the Daily Express.
That's right.
And as the destroyer,
right.
what was his name?
HMS Kelly.
As the Kelly went down,
right.
the Daily Express floated under the water because they had said there'll be no war this year, next year,
yes,
now or never.
Yes. Coward.
Coward.
Yeah.
But you were part of that particular social consciousness at that time.
Sure.
Now, another thing you did was, we were always in a panic about social issues. Tell me about 10 Rillington Place and capital punishment. I know it's not fair to ask you on social issues.
Of course, no.
But one needs a little leadership now and again on this kind of thing, because I'm basically a redneck, you know, and given the opportunity, I want to hang them all. Convince me I'm wrong.
I don't believe you.
Well, you know, sometimes it's a little showbiz.
Yes. Well, I am opposed to capital punishment. I'm opposed in principle, and I'm opposed in practical terms. Ludwig Kennedy wrote an extraordinary book about Christie and Rillington Place. And I think there's little doubt in anybody's mind that Timmy Evans was in fact hanged erroneously. He was hanged for the murder of his wife. In fact, it was totally evident that Christie had murdered Timmy's wife.
Did you make a movie on that?
Yes, yes.
I never saw that movie.
Rillington Place. I thought that's why you asked me.
No,
yeah.
but I remember you'd been involved. Were you in the movie or did you?
No, I played it. I played Christie.
Oh, you played Christie?
Yeah, and a marvellous English actor, Welsh actor called John Hurt, played Timmy Evans. And we all made it for reduced monies and so on, in an attempt, because there was a great move at home, led by some of the very right-wing Tories, to reintroduce capital punishment. And a number of us were very opposed to that, and I don't say it really had a major effect, but it was our way of registering our protest.
Evans had been hanged for a number of murders, and after he went, they found more bodies whom somebody else had killed.
Right, who Christie had killed.
Yeah, it's rather nice to know that you're still an active, prominent member of the Labour Party of the United Kingdom.
Well, do you know I'm not?
Oh, shame on you.
Yes, no. I tell you why. I resigned from the Labour Party about 15 months ago, 12 months ago, and I joined the new party called the SDP with Roy Jenkins and David Owen and Shirley Williams and Bill Rogers and so on. Basically because I am opposed to the block voting which the major unions now hold in control of the leader of the Labour Party and the Labour Party cabinet. I mean, I'm still a socialist, but I couldn't remain in the Labour Party. It wasn't the Labour Party that I originally
It's a question of principle. You don't give a damn if Maggie gets back in, as long as your principles are properly represented in the SDP.
No, I'm afraid I can't admit to even that. If Maggie gets in, I think I should probably leave home. The whole Falklands issue upsets me enormously. Not that I think for one moment one should necessarily have condoned the barbaric behavior of a South American dictatorship, which is what it was. And I think one has to take certain actions. I don't have the moral courage to be a pacifist, and I fear that under certain circumstances I would resort to a threat of violence, which is a terrible admission to have to make, but I'm afraid it's probably true. What I really can't bear is the terrible sort of jingoism that is evoked by that sort of flying of the Union Jack and so on, and taking a glory about murdering some poor 19-year-old Argentinian sailor. I mean, I think it's dreadful. And if the job has to be done, certain things has to be done. At least let's be proud of it, you know.
The fact remains, of course, just jingoism is the greatest rallier of the troops and the people that ever was.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
And God knows you've played enough jingos in your day, haven't you?
I'm afraid I have, yes.
Every rank from brigadier to stoker.
Well, I only just got above deck recently, you know. Since I started to lose my hair and put a little more on here, they promoted me from the lower decks up to the elite.
Now, back to the portrayal, the brilliant portrayal of Gandhi. Are you fair to the Brits? Do you overdo the brutality, the laugh attacks, the Amritsar massacre?
No, I don't think we overdo it at all. On the contrary, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre at Amritsar is documentarily absolutely correct. I mean, the troops, the orders, the bullets, the rifles, the deaths is absolutely correct. We haven't exaggerated that in any sense whatsoever. I accept that criticism could be levelled, saying, ah yes, but you know there were very remarkable men and women who served India most loyally, who gave their lives to India, who were devoted to India and made major contributions there. I don't debate that, or rather don't deny that. And the part that Trevor Howard played as Judge Broomfield, I hope, illustrated that sort of calibre of man. The part that Ian Charleson played as Charlie Andrews, the part of the English Admiral's daughter, Mirabelle, and so on, I hope indicates that. But if you are opposed to colonialism, and if you are opposed to subjugation of one nation by another, and that's what you want to say, then you must have the guts to stand up and be counted. And one must say, I oppose this, I think it is wrong, I think it is amoral. You can't then flip the coin and say, oh, but of course I don't really mean that. I mean, we did marvellous things, etc.
Well, yeah, we left the civil service and all that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, I think you've got to stand up and be counted when the time comes. And some will not agree, and that's their prerogative.
Typical attitude.
I couldn't remain in the Labour Party.
I know.
It wasn't the Labour Party that I originally
It's a question of principle. You don't give a damn if Maggie gets back in as long as your principles are properly represented in the SDP.
No, I'm afraid I can't admit to even that. If Maggie gets in, I think I should probably leave home. The whole Falklands issue upsets me enormously. Not that I think for one moment one should necessarily have condoned you know, the barbaric behavior of a South American dictatorship, which is what it was. And I think one has to take certain actions. I don't have the moral courage to be a pacifist, and I fear that under certain circumstances I would resort to a threat of violence, which is a terrible admission to have to make, but I'm afraid it's probably true. What I really can't bear is the terrible sort of jingoism that is evoked by that sort of flying of the Union Jack and so on, and taking a glory about murdering some poor 19-year-old Argentinian sailor. I mean, I think it's dreadful. And if the job has to be done, certain things has to be done. At least let's be proud of it, you know.
The fact remains, of course, just jingoism is the greatest rallier of the troops and the people that ever was.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
And God knows you've played enough jingos in your day, haven't you?
I'm afraid I have, yes.
Every rank from brigadier to stoker.
Well, I only just got above deck recently, you know. Since I started to lose my hair and put a little more on here, they promoted me from the lower decks up to the elite.
Now, back to the portrayal, the brilliant portrayal of Gandhi. Are you fair to the Brits? Do you overdo the brutality, the laugh attacks, the Amritsar massacre?
No, I don't think we overdo it at all. On the contrary, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre at Amritsar is documentarily absolutely correct. I mean, the troops, the orders, the bullets, the rifles, the deaths is absolutely correct. We haven't exaggerated that in any sense whatsoever. I accept that criticism could be levelled, saying, ah yes, but you know there were very remarkable men and women who served India most loyally, who gave their lives to India, who were devoted to India and made major contributions there. I don't debate that, or rather don't deny that. And the part that Trevor Howard played as Judge Broomfield, I hope, illustrated that sort of calibre of man. The part that Ian Charleson played as Charlie Andrews, the part of the English Admiral's daughter, Mirabelle, and so on, I hope indicates that. But if you are opposed to colonialism, and if you are opposed to subjugation of one nation by another, and that's what you want to say, then you must have the guts to stand up and be counted. And one must say, I oppose this, I think it is wrong, I think it is amoral. You can't then flip the coin and say, oh, but of course I don't really mean that. I mean, we did marvellous things, etc.
Oh, yeah, we left the civil service and all that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, I think you've got to stand up and be counted when the time comes. And some will not agree, and that's their prerogative.
Typical attitude, perhaps, from the vast Indian continent, and I can't remember the quote, but you can tell me, I'm sure. You were warned, was it by Indira Gandhi, not to make Gandhi a deity?
Yeah, it was her father. It was Pandit Nehru. It was in 1963, and we'd just finished a very first screenplay, and I'd been to have tea with him. He was a marvellous man, you know, extraordinary man. I went to see him first in very, very early in 1963, and I went in to see him at 8:30 in the morning on a Monday morning. And he had that marvellous gift of persuading you that you were the one person on earth that he wanted to see at 8:30 on a Monday morning. Oh, the most charismatic figure I've ever met in my life. And it was he, after that tea, after he'd leafed through the script, I was saying goodbye to him at his house, Tinmurti, and I was getting into the car, and he was standing on the steps. And he came down the steps, and he said, Richard, one last thing in your film. Whatever you do, do not deify him. That's what we've done in India. And he said he was too great a man to be deified. And I always remembered that because later on in the 80s, I was bashed fairly heavily by a number of people who believed that it was sacrilegious to make a film with Gandhi, about Gandhi, with an actor playing Gandhi, because he was a deity, he was a phenomenon, he was this, he was that. They actually formed a committee to oppose the film, and at a press conference, one lady said to me, there's only one way in which we can portray Gandhi on film, and that's by a moving light. And I was so angry. I did, yes.
And you said?
I did.
You said? Your
I'm not making a film about bloody Tinkerbell. It got me into the most terrible trouble.
Thank you, Sir Richard Attenborough.
Thank you.
I hope you got that last crack. When somebody suggested that Gandhi be represented by a shaft of light, he said, I'm not making a film about bloody Tinkerbell. Remember Tinkerbell? Okay, that's Richard Attenborough. Mark Sager now. He's not Van der Zam's hatchet man. He's going to do Van der Zam's homework in public about what's wrong with school boards. After the break. Has been appointed by Mr. Van der Zam to hold a short-term commission. Into what, Mark Sager? Mark Sager, you'll remember, as the former chairman of West Van School Board. Right. Now, what are you going to do for Willie Van der Zam?
We're going to be examining the cost structure of administration throughout the province's 75 school districts, and we will be examining where there may be areas that those costs could be cut back, and make recommendations on perhaps, or suggestions on new administrative structures.
You don't have much time to do this commission, do you?
No, we don't. We have got to get down to work and do it. We're hoping that whatever recommendations come in could be implemented in 1984.
Are you specifically aiming at what seems to be an incredibly overloaded or top-loaded school district system with so many chief executive officers, deputy superintendents, curriculum directors? Is that what you're looking at, to see if there's waste of money with teachers in highly paid administrative jobs?
That's right, Jack, yeah.
Because I've asked again and again, and I've never been able to get from the Department of Education the total amounts of monies paid for administrators and school boards. Will you be able to get it?
I hope so.
And how are you going to tackle it in public hearings? Are you going to make them wide open public hearings with all the various propaganda groups from both sides? Or how will you handle this without getting involved in the normal British Columbia hysteria?
Well, first of all, I think we'll spend the first little bit of time examining the statistics, and then where things seem out of whack or out of joint, we'll go to those districts, do a little personal investigation, and then hold public hearings with the boards, the staff, and interested people.
Now, there are 75 school districts. You can't do 75 of them.
No, I don't think we'll need to do all 75. I would anticipate right now we'll probably start off with 12 regional meetings throughout the province.
12. Now, would they cover, if you hold a regional meeting, say, in in Delta. Will that cover Surrey, Delta,
Right.
Coquitlam, whatnot?
Yes.
Will you be holding one in Vancouver for sure?
I would think so, yes.
So Vancouver, and have you laid out the 12 regional
No, we haven't
meetings
yet.
yet?
No.
Because you've only just been appointed to the job.
That's right.
The thing that intrigues me is there an appropriate percentage of the total operating cost of a district which should be devoted to administration? Now, in your experience in West Vancouver, do you have any preconceptions on that?
No. I'm trying to go into this thing without preconceptions. I think that what we're looking for is something that is a test for all of the districts throughout the province, and then those districts that can't fall within that test percentage, we'll have to look at other ways or suggestions of correcting that problem.
Is that what was in the rather complicated material that Mr. Van der Zam presented in public before, in which he infuriated Trail by saying they were the worst or something?
I'm not aware of that.
You're not aware of all
no.
these tests and documents. Now, so when do you start your public meetings?
I would anticipate we'll have our first before the end of this month.
Before the end of this month. Oh, you have another member on the commission, do you not?
Yes,
Who
Mr.
is that?
Stables. Mr. Al Stables. He was the superintendent of Victoria.
Now, would you like to hold a little regional public meeting just now and find out what people would like you to look into?
That might be a good idea, Jack.
That's not a bad idea. How did West Vancouver School Board shape up in terms of the proportion of administration to teachers? Because it always seemed to be having opposition to closing schools in West Vancouver.
Yes, mind you, we're not looking at the school question. We're looking at the administration. Over the past year, one of the 4 top administrative jobs was eliminated. And,
in West Van?
In West Vancouver.
So actually you're keyed in right on the administration, which includes everything outside the classroom teacher, is that correct?
Right, and I think that this is something that will gain support, at least I hope it will, to some degree, with the classroom teachers, because I think they too are conscious, or I heard that quite often as the chairman of the school board. Well, tell us what they're doing up in the head office.
Do you regard this as a political job?
No.
Your questions. What would you like Mark Sagar to review in the way of administration of school boards? You might get some good tips. I might get some good stories. On the phone after the break. Mark Sagar, one of the commissioners to examine school district administrative. Is amalgamation of school districts in your terms of reference?
That is, Jack. That's one of the things that we will examine if a district we just simply can't find any other viable solutions. And on top of amalgamation, we'll also be looking at amalgamating services without amalgamating an electoral district.
Go ahead from Terrace to Mark Sagar.
I would like to know, Jack, if the gentleman was able to find out what the dropout rate of the children are in schools.
No, we're not doing that, are we, Mark?
No, we're not actually, no.
No, he's not going. You're not doing the educational aspects of the school.
No, we're not.
Administrative aspects.
That's correct.
You're a very young man to be doing this, but you are a successful businessman in your own right.
Struggling away. Struggling away.
Go ahead, please.
Hello?
That's you, sir.
Yes, I was going to ask Mr. Sager if part of it, terms of reference, would be to check in over the last year or two, or to see what programs that may have been implemented and then slipped into their present budget and carried, and then together with anything else that came along, as was alleged by a former high official in the education.
I'm going to have to ask for a clarification on
the
question.
clarification. You're talking about educational programs.
Yes.
No, Mr. Sagar's terms of reference are administrative costs, administrative comparisons, apparent efficiency, and possible amalgamation of districts with districts. So he's not in on the program bit. Go ahead, please.
I'm a little concerned about the administrative efficiency aspect, and I was wondering if he will be able to look at perhaps how well the administrators within the schools are managing their teachers. And I'm thinking particularly about the criticism of the 9 to 3 teacher, and whether he'll be able to look at the principals who are watching that kind of thing.
Right. We are, the mandate does include principals, so that may be something that comes up in a public hearing, and I'll note the caller's question.
At your public hearings, therefore, but you will take anything to do with the administration of schools?
Yes.
Good. Next call. Go ahead, please.
Hello. I'd like to ask Mark Sager
if he doesn't think it's a little naive to imagine that you can do an inquiry into so-called efficiency in education without considering the question of what education is. I think the idea of looking at efficiency is stupid and naive. You have to ask, first of all, what is the purpose of education and what are you doing? And then you can answer questions like, what kind of administrative structures do you need? What is his comment on that?
Well, I would have to, I suppose, disagree with the caller. I don't think it is naive. I think it's responsible to look and see whether or not we have districts in the province that are over-administered by any standard.
But how can you say they're over-administered if you don't know exactly what the purpose of the administration is?
Well, part of our terms of reference, sir, are to examine what that administrative position is for.
You mean part of your terms of reference are to answer questions like, what is education?
No, sir, it's
not.
not.
Well, why not? How can you talk about administration if you don't know what education is?
You're not going to win this one, Mark, not as anybody else. In case you've been out of the province, sir, we have a government in Victoria which has laid down some arbitrary standards for expenditure of money for school boards, as a result of which a number of school boards are not going to submit, they say, to the financial guidelines. You have a government that's tight on money and have called in Mark Sager to say, is any school board wasting money by comparison with others on administration? Is that correct?
That's correct, Jack.
It's a hard nose. It's not a question of quality of education.
God help British Columbia. I'll still be out of province again, I think, with this rate.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted him to understand. Go ahead to Mark Sager.
Yes, Mr. Webster, I wanted to know if Mr. Sager had a mandate to look into the administrative costs within the ministry itself. Seems to me that about 10 years ago, the Ministry of Education had about 30 to 40 people, civil servants, covering K-12 colleges, institutes, and universities. And now they're up to about 400 or more in the Ministry of Education alone. That doesn't cover McGirr's University Science and...
Okay, good question.
I think it's a very good question, and that was certainly something as a local board chairman that I was concerned with, Jack. The Ministry of Education definitely has a lot of personnel, and I had a meeting with the minister yesterday, and I brought up that point. He had indicated to me that they've cut back about 16%. Unfortunately, my mandate does not cover the Ministry of Education as much as I wish it did.
Good. But some of that material may come out by happenstance at your regional meetings.
Oh, it may well do.
And the press, of course, as well as the public, will be at your regional meetings. More with Mark Sager after the break. Okay. Go ahead to Mark Sager.
Hello, Mark Sager.
Yep.
I am a permanently disabled teacher, taught for 20 years in Vancouver, and throughout that time I became convinced that all of the motivations for teachers applying, and they do have to apply for administration, all of their motivations are completely phony. And I can give you very quickly 5 main reasons why a teacher will apply to get out of the classroom. The first one is he hates kids and wants to get out of teaching. Secondly, he covets power. Thirdly, he covets prestige. Fourthly, he has a messiah complex. And the fifth one has just slipped my mind, and I know you're running out of time, but I suggest that you could take any high school in Vancouver and save anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000 right within the school.
Thank you, sir. That's a guy of firm opinions. Are you looking at the function of principals and VP1s and VP2s?
Not so much, but we will be examining, say, some districts, if they've got 5 very small schools and 5 principals in each school. I think that may come under consideration.
Good point. Kamloops. Go ahead from Kamloops.
Yes. Good morning.
Morning.
I wondered if he's going to be looking into expense accounts. It seems to me The administration don't have many meetings unless they've got food and drink in front of them.
Good question. Good
I'll do it
question.
just for her.
You'll
I'll do it just for her. You bet. I'll write it down.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, the last time Mr. Sager was on the program, he sided with Van der Zalm, if you remember that. So it is a political appointment.
Well, he certainly wasn't going to appoint an NDP or a member of the BC Teachers Federation to do it. Do you plead guilty to being a political friend of Van der Zalm?
I am a friend of Van der Zalm's.
Political friend of Van der Zalm?
Political friend, if you mean we're both of the same ilk, perhaps.
Are you a member of the Social Credit Party?
Yes, I am.
Out front and centre, that's something. That's what I call doing at Sven Robertson, out front and centre. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I would like to know if Mr. Sager is going to investigate the practice whereby increase in number of students automatically increases the salary of a principal in a school. And also where, in fact, students are kept on the roll even though they have moved just simply to keep up the number of students.
Hold on. Is that... what do you know about that?
I suspect the caller may be correct. Principals are paid according to the number, in most districts, according to the number of children in the school. And I've heard of incidents where they have kept children on the list even though they have moved.
Would you be prepared to look into detailed matters like that if the facts are given to you?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Hello. I'd like to suggest that Mr. Sager look into the cost and the frequency of teacher absenteeism. I think that it's fairly high and it's a very costly commodity.
Does that come within the terms, Mark?
No, Jack, it really doesn't. And I'm not denying that perhaps someone shouldn't examine that throughout the province, but I don't think that falls within my mandate.
You've only got between now and September. When will you hold the first of your regional meetings?
I suspect within the first month, within the next month.
Within the next month, say the beginning of March. Yes. Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Sager, one of the problems that has been around the board tables for some time now is this question of locally appointed superintendents versus a recommendation from the department in Victoria.
Yes.
Will you be giving consideration to this question? Because as you well know, the superintendent salaries are, in some cases, quite high. Hang up and listen for your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. The caller is correct. There is a procedure in the province where certain districts, depending on their size, can either appoint or hire their own superintendent and thus set their own pay scale. Or they can require the Ministry of Education to do that, and that will be one of the things we will examine.
Yeah, because we hear some horrendous stories. I'm still trying to get the total cost of administration throughout the province compared to the cost of teaching.
We'll try and get that for you, Jack.
I'm very grateful. Mark Sager. It's a two-man commission here, Mr. Stables. Starting the hearings in March, got a report by September on administration costs in BC schools. I'll be back after the break. I don't think I'll have a Hydro spokesman on tomorrow because I don't want a Hydro spokesman on about the apprentices until they can give me some answers. And the crew is laughing at me because I've got a couple of guys on tomorrow about a topic which interests me, the safety of wood stoves. They've never seen wood stoves. You know what they're like nowadays. And we've another good story tomorrow. I haven't time to tell you about it. I'll be back at 9 a.m. precisely. The problem of BC Hydro's terminated apprentices on check at midnight. Canadians in trouble overseas on Webster.